Hey everyone, Fernando here. Thank you for tuning in. And today we're going to talk about transmission servicing. What are some of the costs associated with servicing? Why should we service our vehicles to begin with? And when should we service our vehicles? So first, let's talk about why the heck should we service our vehicles? Well, what we want to do is, we want to keep our vehicle's transmission working optimal for as long as possible, right? The last thing we want to do is have to shell out $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 for a transmission. Nobody wants to pay that for their transmission. So what can we do to avoid that, right? Really, the only thing we can do is to service it when the servicing is due. So first thing we should do is figure out what that looks like for your vehicle. When should we service the transmission on my vehicle, right? We can simply Google it, or most vehicles come with some type of manual from the factory. We can go over that, or we can simply, go to your local repair shop or dealership and ask them when it should be serviced and go ahead and follow that protocol, right? We want to stay on top of transmission servicing. Very important. So that kind of falls in line with when should we service it, right? We should service it whenever the factory says we should service it. Now, there are some manufacturers that suggest servicing it every 100,000 miles. For me, I think that's just too big of a gap, right? So to go from 0 to 100,000 miles without servicing your transmission doesn't make any sense to me. And I think at the maximum, we should be doing a service every 40, 50,000 miles maximum. Preferably, I'd like to see that transmission in for servicing every 25 to 30,000 miles, right? What we're seeing is we are seeing a breakdown of the fluid, whatever type of fluid it might be, around that range. So, every 35 to 40,000, maybe every 30,000, we want to get it in here and do a service on the transmission. And I think if we can follow that protocol, we will get a pretty good, life out of your transmission. Now, we also want to make sure that we're following the maintenance protocol for your vehicle, be it oil changes, changing out your air filters, doing your tune-ups. All of that really helps stretch out the life of the vehicle, right? So a good running engine is only going to help prolong the life of a transmission. And the opposite also applies, right? A bad running engine is gonna really shorten the life of the transmission. And why is that? Because they all work together, right? The transmission and the engine, although they are two separate entities, they work together. And so when one is running good, it really helps the other one run good as well. So what are some of the costs associated with transmission servicing? That really depends on what type of vehicle you have, right? Some vehicles, some manufacturers, there is no filter to be serviced. You can only do a drain and a fill and or a flush, right? So a drain and a fill on some vehicles can start at the $300 range, maybe go up to as high as $500, and that's really accessibility. Some of these drain plugs, some of these fill plugs are really hard to get to. And you got to remove, maybe the air cleaner or in some cases the battery just to get to those plugs. So it takes quite a bit of time, to get the service done. And then, if we have a flush, it's a different type of service. It takes longer. That can go as high as, $700, $800 to do the flush. And then there are some cases where you can do both the changing of the filter and do a flush, which is, for me, I think that's the ultimate way to service your vehicle. Replace the filter and to do the flush as well, like the total package. And that can, it is a little bit expensive, but it's a lot cheaper in the long run than having to replace your transmission. And that can vary, right? We do a lot of Chevy Silverado transmissions here, so I would say the average cost to do a flush and a service could be in the $700 to $900 range. And that depends on the year, two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, things like that. So, that's kind of the range for transmission servicing. Of course, you have like an import, like an Acura. those transmissions for the most part have no filter to replace, so you can either do just a flush or a drain and a fill. And again, we're looking somewhere in the $300 to $500 range to do that. And of course, we're in California, so we are in California in the wine country, so our prices are going to be higher than most of the rest of the country. So it really depends on where you live and so on. So yeah, I think that's going to cover today's topic. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to see you on the next one.